invite Dr. Devashish Nanda sir from Odisha. He is an associate professor at IMS and SUM Hospital, Odisha. Dr. Devashish sir.
Thank you, Aboli.
Yes, I would like you to take over.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So, a warm welcome to all of you who are present, and welcome all the participants from the SNCU of various states. So today we have to cover two topics which are very important in the care of neonates admitted to SNCU: fluid management and hypoglycemia. So without wasting time, let's go to the first topic of today, which is IV fluid management in neonates. Okay, is the screen is visible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let's start. So the learning objectives of today's presentations are to understand the physiological changes in fluid balances which occur after birth, indication of starting intravenous fluid to neonates admitted to SNCU, and what is the normal fluid requirement, how to monitor fluid status, and how to adjust IV fluids with enteral feeds, and we'll discuss certain specific clinical conditions. So as you all know, water is very essential for survival, and this water is distributed inside the body in two compartments. These are extracellular compartment and the intracellular compartment. So the fluid which is present in the extracellular compartment is called as extracellular fluid, and the fluid in the intracellular compartment is called as the intracellular fluid. And this extracellular fluid is predominantly constituted by plasma, which is the circulating blood volume, and the interstitial fluid which surrounds the individual cells. So in this picture you can see, as the gestational age advances, the amount of total body water gradually decreases, and so is the extracellular fluid compartment. As you can see, in a premature baby, the total body water content is around 90%, and extracellular fluid constitutes around 60%. But in a term baby, at the time of birth, you can see the total body water is around 75%, and extracellular fluid constitutes 40%. But in an adult, you can see the intracellular fluid compartment is higher as compared to the extracellular fluid, and it constitutes around 40% of the total body water. And throughout the gestation and during the labor, delivery, and even after the postnatal, even in the postnatal life, there is gradual change in this. There is a dynamic and gradual change in this total body water, which is happening throughout the gestation, during delivery, during labor, and during the postnatal life. And initially, you can see the changes are little bit rapid, but in the later period, these changes are little bit slower. So as you can see, with increasing age, the total body water content and the extracellular fluid content gradually decreases, and the content of intracellular fluid gradually increases. And roughly at around 3 months of age, the proportion of fluid in the intracellular compartment is almost equivalent to extracellular compartment. So next. Okay, then there are certain electrolytes which are present in the extracellular fluid as well as in the intracellular fluid. The positively charged ions are called as the cations, and the negatively charged ions are called as the anions. So as you can see from this picture, sodium is the predominant cation present in the extracellular fluid, and chloride and bicarbonate are the predominant anions in the extracellular fluid. Similarly, in the intracellular fluid, potassium is the predominant cation, and phosphate and protein constitute the predominant anions in the intracellular fluid. So a delicate balance between the extracellular fluid and intracellular fluid electrolyte concentration is very crucial for this fluid and electrolyte balance of the neonate. And this change in the osmolality of the extracellular fluid is often reflected as a net movement of water into or out of the cell. So ultimately, the regulation of this extracellular fluid concentration or osmolality controls the size of as well as the osmolality of the intracellular fluid compartment. So then we'll discuss what are the sources of water loss in a neonate. So we have two types of water loss. First is insensible water loss, and second is the sensible water loss. Sensible water loss means which is visible to the which is visible, just like urine output and stool output. Insensible water loss is not visible, and it is predominantly from the skin and respiratory tract. And out of the total insensible water loss, skin contributes to 2/3 of the total insensible water loss, and respiratory tract contributes to 1/3 of the total insensible water loss. So healthy neonate, they tend to lose weight initially after birth, and this daily weight loss can be up to 2 to 3% per day, which ultimately results in a cumulative weight loss of about 5 to 10% in a term baby and 10 to 15% in case of preterm babies. So anywhere weight loss more than 5% in a 24-hour period is considered as abnormal or excessive weight loss. And most of the term babies, they regain birth weight by around 7 to 10 days. And most of the premature baby, they regain birth weight by around 2 weeks. So from this chart, again, you can see the amount of insensible water loss is dependent on the birth weight or the gestational age. So lower the birth weight or lower the gestational age, higher will be the insensible water loss. So as you can see, less than 1 kg baby, they lose around 60 to 80 ml of per kg per day of insensible water loss from the skin in day 1. And up to 1000 to 1500 grams, they lose around 30 to 65 ml per kg of water through skin. And in babies more than 1500 grams, the insensible water loss accounts for around 15 to 30 ml per kg of water loss. So what are the factors affecting insensible water loss? So these are the list of the factors which affect the loss of water from skin or insensible water loss. But out of these, two things are most important. One is the level of maturity, just we have discussed now. The second one is the ambient humidity. So an increase in the humidity in the newborn's environment can significantly decrease the insensible water loss. So humidity, if you increase the humidity from 20% to almost 70 to 80%, the insensible water loss will be decreased by around 30 to 50%. So then coming to the one of the important aspects is the indication of IV fluids. So as you know, IV fluid is one of the most commonly used therapy, as well as one of the most commonly misused therapy also, you can say. So all babies who are admitted to SNCU, they do not need IV fluids. So we have certain indication. So IV fluids should be started to a particular group of neonates having a particular indication. So what are the indications? So first is severe perinatal asphyxia. So even if the baby is having a perinatal asphyxia, not all babies with perinatal asphyxia require IV fluids. Mild to moderate perinatal asphyxia, these babies can be managed with enteral feeds. And only the babies with severe perinatal asphyxia, we should start IV fluids. Then intestinal obstruction, whether it is detected during the antenatal period or in the postnatal period, or from the clinical features like excessive vomiting or abdominal distension. So in those ways, you can start IV fluids. And if there is any ileus or necrotizing enterocolitis, you can start IV fluids. Infants with absent or reversed end diastolic flow in the umbilical artery, particularly less than 35 weeks, need IV fluids to start IV fluids. Any baby with hemodynamic instability or shock, then preterm babies less than 1200 grams or less than 30 weeks, initially you have to start IV fluids. Then neonates with moderate to severe respiratory distress, dehydration, and certain metabolic conditions like hypoglycemia or inborn error of metabolism needs institution of IV fluids. So then come to the fluid requirement. So the total fluid requirement of a neonate, it is a sum of maintenance plus deficit plus ongoing loss. So maintenance fluid is equal to the insensible water loss with sensible water loss and the water which is needed for tissue growth. And the basal energy requirement for neonates in the initial days of life is around 40 to 50 kilocalorie per kg per day. But often this calorie is not met during the initial period, which results in a catabolic state. And this catabolic state produces certain amount of solutes, which are called as endogenous solutes. So endogenous solutes are produced in the initial days. And after first 2 days of life, as the feeding is advanced, or we are adding some electrolytes, so there is addition of this exogenous solute. So during the first 2 days of life, there is high endogenous solute and exogenous solute load is little bit lower. Then coming to the electrolyte requirements. So neonate, as you have discussed in the previous slides, they are having a relatively volume expanded state in the first days of life. And early administration of sodium supplementation is often associated with a risk of hypernatremia. And potassium should be added to IV fluids only after the initial diuresis have occurred. That is usually after 48 hours. So we have learned that electrolytes should not be provided in the first 1 to 2 days of life. The maintenance sodium or potassium requirement in the first week of life is around 2 milliequivalent per kg per day. And after 7 days, the requirement is slightly higher, 2 to 3 milliequivalent per kg per day. But premature neonates, they are not able to conserve sodium. They have increased urinary loss of sodium, which increases the sodium requirement of a premature neonates. They may often require a higher sodium. They have a higher sodium requirement, which may be up to 4 to 5 milliequivalent per kg per day. So an appropriate fluid balance is often reflected by a good urine output, which is about 1 to 3 ml per kg per hour. Urinary specific gravity in the normal range, which is 1.008 to 1.012. And a normal cumulative weight loss, just we have discussed, 5 to 10% in term babies and 10 to 15% in case of preterm babies. So then this is a guideline to start fluid and electrolyte therapy. So we'll discuss two groups of neonates. So first group is neonates with birth weight more than 1500 gram. Second group is neonate with birth weight less than 1500 gram. So as you have discussed, this endogenous solute has to be excreted. Just we have discussed, and due to the catabolic state in the initial period, there is production of this endogenous solute, which is about 6 milliosmol per kg. And to excrete this solute load, a urine output of roughly about 20 to 40 ml per kg is required. And we have the insensible water loss, as you have discussed in a term baby or more than 1500 gram baby, is about 15 to 30 ml per kg. So in addition to the urine output, we have to add insensible water loss about 20 to 30 ml per kg. So this finally results in an initial fluid requirement of roughly around 60 ml per kg per day for neonates with birth weight of more than 1500 gram. And initial fluid of choice, as we have discussed, no electrolyte should be added. So it should be 10% dextrose and to maintain a glucose infusion rate of 4 milligram per kg per minute. So next, coming to the preterm neonates with birth weight less than 1500 gram. So again, here we have discussed that they have a higher insensible water loss, which is often 35 to 60 ml per kg per day. So in addition to the normal urine output to excrete the endogenous solute, which is about 40 ml per kg in term babies, it may be slightly more in case of preterm babies because the concentrating ability of the preterm neonates is slightly less as compared to term babies. So the urine output may be slightly higher. Urine output should be a little bit slightly higher in preterm babies to excrete the endogenous solute. Along with that, they have insensible water loss. So this accounts to the initial fluid requirement for preterm baby around 80 ml per kg per day. And again, the fluid should be without electrolytes. It should be 10% dextrose. So then coming to the, again, these guidelines, we have not assumed any significant deficit or ongoing loss in these cases. Then after the first day, gradually solute load increases, both endogenous as well as exogenous. The solute load presented to the kidneys increases. So this results a more increase in the urine output to excrete this solute load. So fluid also required for fecal loss and growth. So fecal loss amounts to around 5 to 10 ml per kg of water loss. And for growth, the babies grow at a rate of 10 to 20 gram per kg per day. And assuming that the new cells which are formed contains at least 70% water, this needs additional of 10 to 15 ml per kg of water. So this finally results in a daily increment of about 15 to 20 ml per kg per day of fluid till we reach a maximum of 150 ml per kg per day. And after 48 hours, as we have discussed, we should add electrolytes, that is sodium and potassium. So this is a rough guideline of how to start and increase the fluid during the first week of life. As you can see, we have two rows. The upper row is for neonates with birth weight less than 1500 gram, and the lower row is for neonates with birth weight more than 1500 gram. So in neonates with birth weight less than 1500 gram, you start with a fluid rate of 80 ml per kg per day and gradually increase by 15 ml per kg per day till you reach 150 ml per kg per day on day 6 of day 7. Similarly, in neonates with birth weight more than or equal to 1500 gram, we start with 60 ml per kg per day and gradually increase every day by 15 ml per kg per day till we reach a rate of 150 ml per kg per day on day 7. So here again, one important concept is that, so always consider birth weight for calculation of this fluid until the baby regains birth weight. So after the baby regains birth weight, you can use the current weight for calculation. So then how to administer IV fluids? So we have two instruments which are basically available in all SNCUs to administer IV fluids. So we have this syringe pump and the second one is a micro drip set. So syringe pump is a little bit better as compared to micro drip set. So you can use either syringe pump or micro drip set. Always calculate the fluid requirement for 24 hours and divide this total fluid requirement into your shifts, like 8-hour shift or 6-hour shift, and calculate the fluid requirement for 6 to 8 hours, you can say, and always use sterile precaution while preparing IV fluids. So this is one of the most important aspects in care of a newborn, to maintain strict asepsis while preparing IV fluids, and often it is very helpful if another assistant can help during the preparation of IV fluids. Then fill the required amount of fluids which you have calculated in the syringe pump or in the burette of the micro drip set and set the flow rate. In micro drip set, the number of microdrops per minute is equal to ml per hour in the syringe pump. Start the infusion and monitor the fluid rate and discard any leftover fluid PMO line micro drip set after 24 hours, and always discard any unused fluids after 24 hours. So these are the skills which are required. We'll see at the end of this presentation. Then one more important aspect of care is monitoring of fluid and liquid status. So assessing fluid status. How to assess the fluid status in a neonate? So we can take the help of some history, like maternal history of certain drugs, oxytocin, excessive fluid. So this can lead to neonatal hyponatremia. Similarly, indomethacin, ACE inhibitors, furosemide, aminoglycosides, all this can affect the neonatal kidneys. History of oligohydramnios, the neonatal history like in utero hypoxemia or perinatal asphyxia, often associated with tubular necrosis, hypervolemia, and clinical evaluation we'll discuss in the subsequent slides, and laboratory evaluations. So clinical examination, so all babies who are receiving IV fluids, we should regularly inspect the IV site for any redness, swelling, or any extravasation, and IV cannula should be replaced with the earliest signs. Then you have to look for the signs of overhydration, which include puffiness of eyes, edema or excessive weight gain, respiratory distress, and all babies who are receiving IV fluids, blood sugar should be monitored every 8 hourly. Clinical examination. So the signs of dehydration, which are very obvious in older children, these are not very apparent in a neonates. So this skin turgor, sunken anterofontanelle, dry mucous membrane are not that sensitive indicator of hydration status in a neonates. Rather, we should focus on clinical evaluations like heart rate, blood pressure, urine output, capillary refill to monitor the volume status in a neonate. So the most important aspect here is the measurement of body weight. So serial body weight measurement is very much useful to estimate the fluid balance in newborns. Again, cumulative weight loss is up to 5 to 10% in term babies and 10 to 15% in preterm babies. So if there is a failure to lose weight in the first week of life, it is an indication of fluid restriction, and excessive weight loss during the initial period, it will require correction with intravenous fluid. So weight should be measured at least 12 hourly in all sick and extremely preterm units to guide fluid therapy. So the most precise method for assessing the amount of fluid deficit in a neonate is based on the pre-illness weight. So percentage of dehydration in a neonate can be estimated by this formula, pre-illness weight minus the current weight divided by pre-illness weight into 100. So this gives a rough estimate of the fluid status or the degree of dehydration in a neonate. Then again, based on these clinical parameters, that is the serial weight gain and urine output, we can roughly adjust the daily fluid requirement. So if the serial weight loss is in a normal range, or normal weight loss is there along with a normal urine output, we should go with the daily increment, which is about 15 ml per kg per day. If there is no significant weight loss in the initial period and urine output is normal or low, then we may restrict the increment for that day. If there is excessive weight loss, which is more than 5% along with a normal urine output, we may increase the increment by another 10 ml per kg per day. This is in addition to the normal increment. And excessive weight loss, if it is associated with low urine output, then we can increase the requirement further by 10 to 20 ml per kg per day. And if there is excessive weight gain with normal urine output, you can reduce the amount of fluid by 15 to 20 ml per kg per day. And if there is a significant weight gain along with low urine output, we should suspect acute kidney injury, decrease the fluid by 10 ml per kg. And if AKI is confirmed, we should replace the urine output with half normal saline. Along with, we should replace the insensible water loss with 10% exposure. So laboratory investigations, so many times these investigations are not available or not accessible at SNC level. So, but still, if facility is there, you can monitor serum sodium, urine osmolality. These two are important things to monitor. So serum sodium value should be maintained between 135 to 145 milliequivalent per liter. So a higher sodium value usually indicates negative fluid balance. So fluid has to be increased, and a lower sodium value usually indicates the features of fluid overload and fluid has to be restricted. Similarly, urine specific gravity and osmolality, if facility is there, you can monitor. The acceptable range of urine output should be 1 to 3 ml per kg per hour. A normal specific gravity of 1.005 to 1.012, and osmolality, normal osmolality between 100 to 400 milliosmol per liter. But term babies can concentrate urine up to 700 milliosmol per liter, and preterm babies can concentrate up to 500 milliosmol per liter. So a lower value of this specific gravity or osmolality usually indicates a positive fluid balance, and fluid has to be restricted or reduced. And a higher value usually indicates negative fluid balance and fluid has to be increased. So then coming to certain specific clinical conditions like perinatal asphyxia. So perinatal asphyxia, all babies with perinatal asphyxia, they do not need IV fluids. Many babies with perinatal asphyxia, which are mild to moderate category, can be managed with enteral feeding, either through urogastric tube or sometimes with Pallade or Patori spoon feeding. So IV fluids are indicated only in case of severe perinatal asphyxia, and routine fluid restriction is not necessary in case of asphyxia. So fluid restriction should be done only in presence of hyponatremia, which indicates your syndrome of inadequate ADH secretion. And the intake should be restricted to 2/3 of the maintenance till the serum sodium values return to normal. So once the urine output is better and serum sodium has improved, so fluid should be gradually restored to normal levels. So another common condition is premature neonates or very low birth weight neonates. So the major problem here is that they have a large insensible water loss due to very thin and immature skin barrier. And because of that, they tend to lose water, and which results in an excessive weight loss in these premature or very low birth weight neonates. So often it is better to prevent this insensible water loss rather to treat the loss. And this stratum corneum matures over 2 to 4 weeks. The fluid requirement the first week may be decreased significantly by reducing the insensible water loss with the use of plastic transparent barriers or use of double walled incubators. So you have incubators, so that will definitely decrease your total insensible water loss. But if you don't have incubator, then you can use this plastic transparent barriers. That also will reduce the amount of insensible water loss. So again, the initial fluid of choice should be 10% exposed. So this is the transparent barrier which is available. It's common food grade plastic wrap which can be used like this over the warmer, and it will prevent your insensible water loss in case of premature neonates. Or else you can use incubator if available. So then coming to how to adjust IV fluids with enteral feeding. So the idea is not to give IV fluids for a prolonged period. As soon as the baby's clinical condition improves, it should start enteral feeding and increase, if the baby tolerates this enteral feeding, increase feeds by 20 to 40 ml per kg per day. At the same time, will decrease the total amount of IV fluids and maintain the total fluid requirement according to that day. Subtract the daily volume of fluids from the total fluid requirement and give the remaining volume as intravenous fluid, and discontinue intravenous fluid when the baby tolerates a feed of about 100 ml per kg per day. So just we will go through an example of calculating fluid requirement in a preterm neonates who is delivered at 30 weeks with a birth weight of 1200 gram. So on day 1 of life, our total fluid requirement is around 80 ml per kg per day. So the clinician, they have started with full IV fluids and not given any enteral feed during the first day, and so full IV fluids on the day 1. But on day 2, as the clinical condition was improved, the clinician decided to start enteral feed at a rate of 20 ml per kg per day. So the remaining 75 ml per kg is being given as an intravenous fluid. Similarly, on day 3, again the baby tolerated feeds and feeds volume has been increased by another 20 ml per kg. So now the enteral feed is 40 ml per kg. And the total fluid requirement on day 3 is around 105 ml per kg. So the remaining 65 ml per kg is being given as IV fluids. And here one additional change is that they have changed from 10% dextrose to isolate P. That is, electrolytes have been added. Similarly, as you can see on day 5, the baby reached an enteral feeding of 100 ml per kg per day. So at that time, they have stopped IV fluids. So then coming to the electrolyte contents of various body fluids, as you can see here, stomach, intestine, bile, ileostomy loss, and diarrhea, they have different sodium, potassium, and chloride content in the fluid. So you can see small intestinal fluid, bile, and ileostomy fluid, they contain a higher sodium content. They have a high sodium content as compared to your stomach and diarrheal fluids. So the fluid replacement of choice, in this case, if the fluid is from stomach or a diarrheal fluid, it should be replaced by half normal saline. And if it is from small intestine or bilious or ileostomy loss, it has to be replaced with normal saline. And always add potassium chloride after the baby has passed urine. So these are the commonly available IV fluids at SNCU, and their electrolyte compositions is given. So the key messages here are: use intravenous fluid judiciously. Judiciously means start intravenous fluid only if there is an indication. Regularly monitor the intravenous fluid and fluid status of the baby, and try to initiate enteral feeding as early as possible. Gradually progress your enteral feeding and try to stop intravenous fluid as early as possible. Then initial first 48 hours, do not use electrolytes and use 10% dextrose as the fluid of choice in the first 48 hours of life. And the syringe pump or microtripset, they facilitate administration of small amount of IV fluids to neonates. And strict SFCs should be followed while preparing IV fluids. Again, I'm telling, if you can take the help of another person during preparation of IV fluid, that will be better. And serial weight recording along with urine output monitoring. These two are very useful in assessing the fluid balance and adjusting the required IV fluids. And enteral feeding should be started or initiated as early as possible, and simultaneously IV fluids should be adjusted and gradually decreased. Thank you.